Welcome back to Epic Cars, and as you can see, I'm in my new tow vehicle. It's a 2005 Ford Excursion diesel. If you've watched any of my previous videos, you know that this is actually my mom and dad's. Well, how did I come about getting this truck? I had a company vehicle that was I think it was a 2017, maybe 18 GMC Acadia. So I went ahead and gave it to them, sold it to them, and then I was going to sell this, and then they were just going to use the proceeds from this vehicle to pay me for the car that I sold them. Well, I tried selling this and over, I don't know, probably a course of 3, 4, 5 weeks, something like that. And the one thing that I kept having come back to me was, well, has it been bulletproofed? Has it been bulletproofed? You know, the Powerstroke diesel sucks and all this other stuff. And so that's what this video is about. We're going to be talking about the 6.0 Powerstroke, and we're going to talk about why everybody rags on them so much. And I'm going to kind of debunk some of those issues with the fact that, guys, they're just engines, just like anything else. Yeah, every single engine has a weak point. Every single car has issues, recalls, things like that. You got to deal with this stuff in any car that you buy. So why are you kind of coming down so hard on the Powerstroke diesel and the 6.5 liter diesel? And the fact that I've owned both of those at the same time, and they're kind of two of the most hated diesels out there, or ridiculed maybe I should say. It's a pretty interesting concept to talk about, and so I'm going to teach you guys some stuff about these diesels. When I was selling this vehicle, I was just getting really frustrated with the fact that, man, this thing is nice. I mean, 80,000 original miles, one owner. My mom and dad took impeccable care of it. It's a great vehicle. I mean, I call it the ultimate tow vehicle. I mean, you can carry, 8 people in here. You can tow up to, I think, 10,500 pounds, something like that. You've got 4-wheel drive, you got diesel. You know, what else is there? Yeah, it's a little older platform. It's a 2005, but it's still, you know, got all the creature comforts that you would want in any vehicle. And so whenever I was trying to sell it, people were just giving me such a hard time, and they kept asking me about well, has it been bulletproofed? Or I hear so many bad problems about it. No, first of all, it hasn't been bulletproofed. Yes, there's probably some things that I'm going to be doing to it to make it more dependable and kind of take care of some of the weak points from the factory. But if I'm not putting a bigger turbo on this, and I'm not doing a huge tune and things like that, man, these Powerstroke diesels are good all day long. You just got to know what the weak points are and what to look out for. So right from the factory, this thing had more torque than a 5.9 Cummins, more torque than the Duramax, and it got fairly decent gas mileage, according to this paperwork here. For its era, it was a really good performer. It started getting kind of a bad rap really early on in its introduction because of some of the inherent weak points that we have with the engine. So the first things first is the head bolts. They have these things called TTY, or torque to yield head bolts. And basically what that means is you would torque them down to the specified requirement, and they would essentially, the best way to say it, they would deform a little bit, and they would hold the head onto the block. Well, obviously if you try to take them back off again, they're unusable, they're no good. And then if you start doing really heavy duty upgrades, you know, you're really increasing the boost, you put a bigger turbo on, you do a big tune, things like that, it can lead to head bolt failure and head gasket failure. But as long as you're not doing any major performance, and when I say major, guys, I'm talking about, you know, if you're doing anything less than about 150 horsepower gain, I wouldn't mess with the head bolts. I mean, I think it's something that maybe later on down the road, if you ever have to do any head work, go ahead and change them out, put some ARP head bolts in, head studs, things like that. But until then, as long as you're not doing any major crazy performance updates, I don't think you need to mess with that. So the first thing is the head bolts, I'm not going to change those out. Well, the next one is EGR valves and EGR coolers. Guys, I can tell you, and as I mentioned, I've got several diesels, and I've owned several diesels throughout my lifetime. The exhaust gas recycling systems that most manufacturers put out there are junk. soot buildup, thus then negating the whole reason it exists, which is to basically recycle the exhaust gas into your engine. It's an emissions issue, and the cooler is to basically reduce the temperature of that gas going into your combustion chamber, just like a snorkel on your intake system does. Is it decreases the, puts cool air in there for it to combust. So this is an emissions thing only. A lot of them screw up, a lot of them have failure points, and just so happens the Powerstroke has one of those too. So there's two things you can do. First thing is you can just delete it, just take it out, cap off the emission system and get rid of it. The second thing you can do is just put on an aftermarket system that's a little bit better designed, and that is one part of the quote-unquote bulletproofing that you can do to a Powerstroke diesel. The next thing is oil cooler failure. There has been some issues with the Powerstroke oil coolers. Keeping them clean, making sure that you've got good clean oil is probably one of, if not the highest issue that you need to deal with on an oil cooler. And I will say that going back to the very beginning, maintenance, just like anything else, just like any other, whether it be a gas engine or a diesel engine, maintenance is the key. And so making sure that you change your oil, keep very clean oil in your diesel at all times, especially in these Powerstrokes. I think there's a lot of good 6.5 liter diesels out there, 6.0 Powerstrokes, that guys with just a little bit of common sense, maybe a few little changes here and there, would make you a great running vehicle for a very, very long time. So the bad press out there on these engines are, I think, a little bit overblown. I think that, yes, there were some inherent issues with the engines. I'm not saying there weren't, but if you know what those inherent issues are, and you keep up the maintenance, and you possibly change out a couple of those systems to aftermarket or upgraded designs that came later on in the life cycle of those engines, I think you'd be very surprised at the performance you would get from these vehicles, but also the longevity that you'd get. And being able to do that while everybody else out there in the world is saying these things are terrible, hey, you can get a really good deal on a good truck with a good diesel engine if you just pay attention. Another thing to look out for on these Powerstrokes is the fuel injection control module, FICM. Basically, it sits on your engine. It can get, I guess, damaged by heat and things like that. So those commonly do go bad. They can be easily replaced. But if you ever have an engine that's rough running or hard to start, things like that, that's probably a sign that your FICM is either out or it's going out. So again, that's a stock part. You can replace it, not a big deal. And it's just something to kind of keep an eye out for. Another common issue is the injectors on this Powerstroke. They actually require, rather than kind of a common rail injector style, they actually require high oil pressure to function properly. And so obviously if you have a lot of gunky oil in your system, your oil pressure is not getting the best flow, things like that through it because it's dirty, it's just oil, old, then it can cause some problems with your injectors. Also, they're really susceptible to what's called stiction. And that's just because of the ultra low sulfur diesel that's out there today. And you can actually get additives for this that you put in your tank. Some guys say you got to put it in every tank to reduce failures of your injectors. I don't know. I would say that's probably overkill, but I would say maybe every other tank. What's great about this Excursion, it has a 44-gallon diesel gas tank. And so, if you put one in every 44 gallons, it's going to last you a long time, first of all, because you don't have to fill up so much. And so I would probably go to the every other gas tank situation, of putting some sort of additive, stiction additive in there to help keep those injectors clean and lubricated. And then, of course, oil. That is pretty much the common thread that I'm seeing throughout most of the issues with the Powerstroke is dirty oil. And so just changing your oil out on a consistent basis. You know, rather than waiting the 5,000 miles. I know in some cases diesels, especially if you use some synthetic stuff, you can go 8,000 miles. You know, do it every 3,000 miles and do it religiously, and make sure that you're using a diesel oil, not just a regular oil. So another issue is the high flow or high pressure oil pump. They tend to go out, they're at a very extremely high pressure, and it has to do with those injectors. It actually uses the pressure, the oil pressure, to help those injectors actually do their job in injecting fuel. And so the Powerstroke has this, it's 3,000 PSI, guys. I mean, that's a high amount of pressure for oil. Obviously, because it's under so much pressure, a lot of your seals can start leaking very easily. And obviously, if you have a problem with your oil pump, then it can cause systematic issues down the line, especially with your injectors. So changing that out, you know, probably at the 100,000 mile mark is not a bad idea. You're going to start noticing issues, oil pressure going down, things like that. But at the same point in time, it may be something that while you're in there doing some of these changes, doing some of these fixes to the engine, doing some routine maintenance, that changing out that oil pump is a good idea. So guys, that's the basics of the Powerstroke engine and the basic failure points of the Powerstroke. I'm sure there's more out there. I probably didn't do the entire list. When you go on the websites and figure out what it costs to bulletproof a diesel, you know, you see them taking off the body and you doing all this stuff. I mean, there's different stages of bulletproofing. That's going everything from head bolts, oil pump, changing out injectors, doing either the EGR delete or upgrading the EGR, the coolants. You know, that's a full-scale deal. And again, all of those things are warranted based on some of the failure points in this engine. But do you have to go spend 5, 8, 10 grand on bulletproofing your engine? Absolutely not. I think if you just do some very pointed upgrades, you do maintenance religiously, I think you're going to be okay with the Powerstroke diesel. So, man, it gets such a bad rap all the time. And I feel sorry for all those Powerstroke guys out there that are really into Powerstrokes. And now I'm one. And so I got to kind of step up and kind of take some flack. I'm sure you guys are going to have comments below. I'm sure there's going to be one-off things here and there that you've had issues with the Powerstroke diesel. All I'm trying to say with this video, and specifically on the Powerstroke, is, guys, you run into that on most engines. And it's just knowing where the weak points are, knowing what the maintenance routines and schedules are, and just being a good, responsible car owner, and making sure that you're keeping track of these issues. When you do have to change something out, yeah, maybe it is a good time to upgrade some of these other systems. But I plan on doing a lot of the quote-unquote bulletproofing myself coming up over the next few videos, so stay tuned. Powerstroke 6.0, baby. I'm a fan, and I'm going to make sure that it runs good. I do some of the things that I need to do to it, but you're going to be seeing a lot more of this excursion.